RevOpsAF, the only podcast for people who are RevOpsAF and want to learn all about things that are RevOps AF.
Our goal is to give the revenue operations community, that includes marketing, sales, and CS, for any of you not paying attention, the skills needed to accelerate their careers.
Welcome to RevOpsAF, the podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Kamala Thompson, and today I am joined by Michael Berean. Michael, tell us a little bit about your background.
First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. Super stoked to be here and a big fan of the conference. My background, my background is like a game of chutes and ladders. I stumbled into working in marketing ops and revenue ops and all that way before it even existed, way before digital marketing was even a thing. I started with a company called ToyWiz, and that was like a really long time ago. So long ago that when you published the website, you had to wait until the next day for the changes to be live on the site. That's how long I've been working in the industry. That's how long I've been working in tech and computers and working in that world. But then I spent some time in Los Angeles. I moved out there for a while, worked for some really cool medium-sized businesses in LA, driving marketing operations and revenue operations for them. Revenue operations it's been around as like a concept. This official like revenue ops thing is something that's been developing over the last 4 or 5 years as like a really official like department or philosophy. So back then it was mostly marketing operations in LA, cutting my teeth with these different companies and learning the game. Then I started my own agency, and then I failed that agency, ran it into the ground after about a year, and then went back to work for some other companies, B2B companies working in manufacturing. Then I started my agency again, and that time it worked and it was successful. I ran that agency, Grace Innovation, for about 6 years, and then wrapped that up about 2 years ago because I just wanted to make some changes and take everything I'd learned and go work on a team and phase that part of my life out. It felt like the right thing to do. So then for a few years, I worked for a company called Sago, formerly Schlesinger Group. They do market research and data collection analytics. And then I transitioned now to basically running B2B marketing operations at SiriusXM as an associate director of B2B Marketing Ops. As that role has taken flight, there's a lot of revenue operations that was needed in that as well, which I had the background in from working at Sago. So it was serendipitous that I was able to bring that to the table as well.
That's amazing. But today we are here to talk about what's going on with AI in the market, because there's a lot. So first, what are you seeing in terms of trends and market chatter, and maybe your own experience with AI as it applies to cold outbound SDR outreach?
First and foremost, it's nothing new. Artificial intelligence has been around since the 70s. And I think just now with the kind of evolution of Gen AI, that's where we really have started to see the power of artificial intelligence. A lot of the older AI, because I've been working with AI for a while, you'd press a button, set a program, it would do a task and complete. With Gen AI now, the power is that it's almost self-learning, it's self-correcting, it's able to go deeper, it's able to go further to complete the task at hand, even with the birth of agents that can, again, self-correct and work more autonomously. I think that's a big leap that OpenAI brought to the table. And obviously it was so well done as far as like the marketing around it and getting the user growth was one of the fastest in history, if not the fastest. So I think between that and then the evolution of NVIDIA as well, being able to use the chips to support this next evolution of AI, all really had to come together to get to this kind of powerful moment that we're seeing. Anyway, with that said, there's so many amazing use cases for AI, but there's also a lot of places where it falls short. And I think one of the biggest places where it falls short when it comes to SDR and it comes to lead generation or demand generation is where it hallucinates, right? That's one of the areas where hallucination is horrible. It's one thing to have AI hallucinations if you're creating an image or doing data analysis. It's a private world that you're working in. But when a customer-facing AI component has hallucinations, it looks really bad and it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. I've seen some amazing uses, for instance, being able to read an entire Salesforce page and customer profile and being able to tell you things that you could not read that quickly and break it down for you. And I've seen that work extremely well. Other areas where I've seen it fall flat on its face is communication with a potential lead or prospect or customer.
And yet that's where so many people are excited to start deploying this and replacing headcount. So let's talk about some of the symptoms we're seeing in the market that's telling us that maybe we're not doing things in the right order. And one of them I hear over and over again is, I'm tired of all the emails flooding my inbox. They're not good. And I can tell it's AI. And I hear that a lot. And as a content marketer and somebody who writes a lot, you can definitely tell the difference between human and non-human in most cases. But what do you think is really driving the biggest disconnect between what people are trying to communicate and what people are receiving when they open their inbox and look at this email from this other company?
I think what drives humans, period, is like authentic connection. When there's an authentic and sincere connection from person to person, I think you can't really ever fake that. And no amount of artificial intelligence is ever going to replace that. Sure, we can replace the way we communicate with each other, maybe, but that connection is lost a lot of times through AI. I think whether it's a $25 million deal or the local deli that you absolutely love, you want to trust the person you're doing business with, the person that you're engaging in opportunities with. And so no matter what AI does, you're still going to need to build a relationship. And that's something that AI is not going to be able to replace. I think the best AEs and AMs are people who know their stuff, know their industry in and out, have been in the game for a long time, know how to field difficult questions that come up that are specific to the industry that a prospect or a lead is working in. I think that's really important. So I think a lot of these things you're not going to be able to necessarily, for now, replicate with AI until companies start to develop a really deep for their own brands that they can learn from. But even then, you're never going to be able to replace that connection. I think people need to forget about trying to do that. You can tell when something is written by AI because it's going to be really hard for it to mimic humans until at least 15 to 20 years from now, when it can start to really understand and produce neural networking like the correct way. That's my take.
Yeah, and I think a huge red flag for me too is that a lot of companies that are trying to replace humans are not having success with the teams they have in place. A lot of these folks don't have their messaging figured out. Their sellers aren't closing at a very high rate. They're seeing a lot of symptoms that lead volume is maybe dried up or it's not converting like it used to. And this is an early stage company that hasn't figured out its messaging yet. So without fixing that and trying to scale some kind of tool is really problematic in my mind, because these things learn from what works. And if we don't have a good baseline of what works, how is it going to further that? And then the other piece is exactly what you were talking about, that we can't replace humans yet. I can see use cases maybe in customer success where we're having the same ticket issue over and over again, and we have documentation to help the end user. But again, you have to know really well what the problems are that are occurring frequently and how to solve it, and already have that infrastructure in place.
I was going to agree with you. If you don't have clean data to work with, if you don't have your data strategy toned and refined, it's going to be real hard to leverage the AI, because it's not going to work. It's going to fail. It's going to produce less than subpar results. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of companies have made, is they put the cart before the horse and tried to introduce AI and all these AI SDRs and customer service bots and CRM like tools and qualification tools, but they don't have their data in line. What they're also not realizing is those companies don't care if you have your data in line or not. They're trying to sell you a solution. They're trying to sell you $100,000 or $500,000 a year piece of software. And once they sign you, it's up to you to use that. They're going to probably provide a CSM, but it's going to have to really work with their data to make that work correctly. And not to mention, if you don't have good data, these companies are probably going to try to sell you professional services too, right? So they're just trying to make money off of you. But you need to get all of that data aligned and prioritize that strategy prior to building your AI solution. And look, it doesn't have to be 100%. Anyone that works in RevOps or marketing ops knows that the data is never going to be 100%. If you can get 60, 70%, you're doing way better than a lot of companies, but you at least have to have a plan in place and a strategy in motion and get to that point before starting to bring in and test an AI solution for anything you're doing.
And this optimism that technology will solve all of our woes is not new, especially in technology, B2B tech companies. You go to one company and then another, the problems are consistent because a lot of them are based in personalities and politics and human conflict.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So,
well, I think humans always think something's going to come and replace the last thing, because we've seen that a few times with major technology shifts, like when we went from horses to a car, or when we went from CD players to digital audio. But there are a lot of instances as well that we need to pay attention to where the thing that came didn't replace the thing before it. So for example, the smartphone or the iPhone, it did not replace the laptop, because you just can't get some things done on a smartphone. And everyone thought, oh, we're going to phase out laptops and that's going to be end of the game. It didn't do it. So now they coexist. I think coexistence is a big thing we need to look at as well. And I think that actually is what works best. Case in point, metaverse, right? Everyone thought we were going to be strapping headsets to our faces and living in the metaverse. It just didn't happen. So that was something that came and did not replace past devices. It's very interesting to pay attention to that. I think the step forward with AI is really going to be about codependence, or coexistence at least. It's going to exist with humans. It's never going to replace them fully.
it's just so interesting with all the research showing that we are the loneliest we've ever been. We feel disconnected, and human connection is so important. Let's talk about where AI makes sense, where a blend maybe of both, or starting with AI and moving over. What have you seen work really well?
So I've seen research work really well. I've seen the ability, for example, if you're working in a Marketo, or you're working in Salesforce, or you're working in CRM database, being able to get answers faster than you ever have before, and then provide those answers to your team or to your leadership. That is just an amazing use case for AI. And now OpenAI has launched the web component, and Google has their web component, and Claude has their web components. That feature is just unmatched. We're able to get so much amazing, accurate documentation on how to create certain flows or create certain processes in Marketo, or looking at code, writing code. I think all of that is an incredible use case. The writing of code and the creation of code, whether it's Apex code or different types of web-based code, I think that's an amazing application. And to be honest, that's the one that's a little bit like, okay, this might at some point replace developers. So those are some amazing use cases I've seen where we've saved time on coding and creating solutions and processes. We've just been able to get the answer from A to B so much faster. And then the other one I see working really well is reporting, being able to take CSV files and spreadsheet data and bring a lot of that into the different AI platforms, the Gen AI, and have it analyzed for you faster than we've ever done. It can actually visualize for you too. It can give you insight into that. It can give you opinion based on web data and best practices. And so I think that those two areas to me, like the research side, the development, and then the reporting, 3 areas, those are some of the most powerful use cases I've seen so far. And what I love about all those areas is it allows our teams to be more efficient and not waste so much time in the weeds or on the side streets there, right? Like in that stuff.
Yeah.
Leadership wants to know the abstract of the data. They don't need to look at a 250 row spreadsheet. They just want to know the abstract. So that's been an amazing use case.
Yeah, it's amazing for taking unstructured data and finding patterns for you. I've seen a lot of success with call recording software like Gong and others, where it can look for keywords, it can look for patterns. That's hugely useful, particularly to a marketing team who's desperate for competitive intel, that sort of thing. Michael, is there anything you'd like to touch on before we close?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to touch on, and it goes back to what we've been touching on throughout the conversation, that we know AI is powerful. We know AI is an incredible tool for humans to use in the workplace, in their personal lives. But never forget about that human connection when it comes to any relationship that you're building. When you're selling somebody something, when you're working with people, it's like we are authentic humans, and humans want to work with other authentic humans. And that's what gets things done, like that honesty and that trust. So I always say when it comes to building these projects or working on different initiatives, people, then the process, then the technology seems to be one of the smarter ways I've seen companies go about it. Have good people, have good relationships in place, build a solid process, and then worry about bringing in the technology. I think that's going to be really important moving forward, and just not to lose sight over the fundamentals of business, right? The fundamentals of revenue operations and marketing is that it's built on good people and good processes.
Yeah, and I will say I've talked to a lot of revenue operations folks who want to start learning Python and really advanced query logic. And if you know the fundamentals, I feel one of the places that Gen AI is going to take over is nuanced queries, taking verbal language and translating it into query language. Really study the data and figure out why it's doing what it's doing, and become really good at diagnosing what we can do to correct a negative trend. So like you were saying, people, process, technology, I think where we as revenue operators bring the most value is being able to go beyond what the tech can do for us and figure out how to fix a really common problem. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I do. Even using AI to fix itself, like using AI to think about the problems we're having, I think is a great use case for it. And flipping it on itself, I totally agree with that.
If you're going to invest time somewhere, try that.
Exactly.
Michael, thank you for being on the show. And you're going to be speaking at RevOpsAF 2025.
I'm super excited about that. I've never been to New Orleans before, so it'll be a first time.
I'm excited to have you there. Where can people find you to network?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Just hit me up on there, give me a follow, shoot me a DM. That's where I spend most of my time professionally, on LinkedIn.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode, everybody.
For more great content like this, join our community at RevOpsCoop.com and check out the links provided in the show notes.
Keep it RevOpsAF, y'all.